Welcome, everybody. Come on into the office. Bring your thought appliances. I know we've got a big lineup this morning because unfortunately a lot of these like thought blenders, they malfunction all the time. So I know I see one customer is already asking for a refund on their brain. I gotta, it's always this sticky issue. We only offer a replacement of a brain of equal or lesser value, or you can get a store credit. Unfortunately, you can only spend that store credit on like getting another brain, and they just like they're. Yeah, I gotta admit. I mean, even though I work here, I mean, they don't pay me very much, and I wouldn't use one of these products like brains. Yeah, like I'm sorry, other people have to have brains, but I would not use one. Like they're dangerous. They're dangerous and they're broken. So I know. I see there. I'm sorry, extermination, but sometimes actually getting the trade in for the brain of like a lesser value. I mean, it's not better, but I mean, it's maybe it's fun. Yeah, it's like it just doesn't work. It's almost like if you have one that kind of works, you're more frustrated with it. Whereas if you know it doesn't work, then you're like, oh, don't use that. It's like if your car loses its engine, you're just like, yeah, we don't try to drive it. But if it has an engine that keeps breaking down, you're like always frustrated. That's what brains are like. Hello, everybody stopping on by. Of course, we will try to work with the brains that we have and learn how to navigate our way through life and do all the awesome things we want to do, even if we are driving a brain and we can't get a refund on it. The understandable that we would want one though. I hope everybody is doing well today. I gotta say this morning on Instagram, or it could be your night, I had just posted the question, "What are thoughts like?" And I guess a lot of the responses are hilarious and amazing. I'll just run through, and even if you want to share some responses, insights into what are thoughts like right now. I know, so a lot of people have correct answers like alpacas, whipped egg whites, a lot of the poo emoji coming through. A lot of people feel it's true. Thoughts, in many ways, thoughts really are just us trying to process, or our brains processing the world. In the same way our stomachs process food, and what comes out, farts, shit, the works. Right? Waste products. And it could help to see the brain in the same way. Like rather than see thoughts as this like special, special nourishment, rather than seeing it as that, see it as the waste product of what we nourish ourselves with. I find that a more helpful way to approach it. So particularly, some of you people looking for refunds on your brain, it might be because you're trying to consume the waste products, right? You're using it backwards. So sorry if that wasn't clear in the user manual. Chris, thank you so much for checking. I'm doing well. It was a beautiful morning this morning. I was waking up, I had my window open, and there's a really nice breeze. It's so bright here right now in the mornings. So I'm doing well this morning. Had some coffee, had coffee with friends online, and now it's great to be with you here in my office, online with you all. So thank you for stopping on by. Rithvik, hello. Hello, so many friendly and familiar names and faces. It's great to see you all. Yes, I figured I put an office up with these great cubicles because soon a lot of people might be going back to the office or figuring out how they're gonna navigate that, or they might never. You might see this and be like, "Wow, I am never going back to a place like that." Oh, Little Miss Beats, totally. So there, I think, therefore I am implies thinking is being, but I don't agree with that. Almost the opposite. Totally true. There's definitely definitely a tendency I'm seeing here in the responses on Instagram. Nobody is suggesting that thinking is being. We've got farts, a moment in time, a taxi driver, and you have to give them good instructions on good places to go. Horrible, unstoppable. Somebody here just said they are like irritating. Just some electricity in the brain. It's accurate. Smoke, the sea, weather, a nightmare. Nobody is going, wow, like my thoughts are so wonderful and I am my thoughts. Not at all. Yeah, Adrian, you really got to watch out. A lot of people use their brains upside down and backwards, and then that, of course, can create a lot of unpleasant issues. Ooh, but yeah, now you're outside, and that is great. Enjoy the outdoors, and Rithik, yes, that's what the brain farts analogy is about. Like really like farts, that your brain is just trying to process the world. And like so many other organs in our body, it's about, that's how so many of our organs work. Like it's really starting to look at it quite literally, right? So many of our organs are taking things in from outside and then trying to process them in a way that they become usable for us. And there are waste products that result from that. And perhaps it could be more useful sometimes to see the thoughts and feelings and all of the other stuff the brain throws up are just natural waste products. We don't have to attach lots of meaning to them. Like if we go and use the toilet, we're not like, oh no, what does this mean about me? It's part of life. We have human bodies. They take in things from outside in the world and they send things out that are not so useful to us. But we run into problems with thoughts and all sorts of stuff in our brain if we latch onto it and we're like, oh, I need to hold on to this. I need to figure it out. It's really like carrying your toilet around with you everywhere you go to be like, I have to find closure on this massive dump I took the other day. Like, don't. It's not going to be pleasant for you. Not going to be pleasant for anybody else. Yeah. And so everybody, as always, if you have any questions about your thought appliances, throw them in the chat below. We will explore them. As always, if anybody's new, this is about approaching mental health and fitness very similar to how we approach physical fitness. It's about skills we build, learning how to have any experience inside or outside of our heads and navigate it in a way that's healthy to us. Not seeing these experiences as some kind of problem or some illness to fix. It's about building skills and doing the things we want to do. And we can do that with whatever our squishy urge blobs throw up. So I see some questions popping up. We'll dive into it. Theodore, you said, have you ever relapsed? How did you cope? I'm feeling like I'm relapsing currently. Absolutely. It's so natural to relapse, especially when we're getting started on learning skills, because the brain will very naturally throw up some kind of experience that we haven't run into before. Or life will. Something will happen and we'll judge it as new and different, and we'll start doing the compulsions because we feel they're necessary, and then we'll realize we've gotten ourselves into a relapse. We often talk ourselves into it. And so it's so useful. Like I have a course, an online course on the Toolkit website, thetoolkitstore.com, on exercises just for relapse. I call it the relapse diagnostic. And it's not to diagnose a relapse. It's to pull apart the relapse and look at how we go off course. It was, so many times when I went back into old habits or I struggled to cut them out, it was so useful to look at really the journey into that. And a lot of the exercises are about exploring not the relapse itself, but what came before. Because when we understand how we talked ourselves into the relapse, or how we were pushed into the relapse by things happening around us, then we can make changes so we can prepare for it and handle those better in the future. And so, I really suggest even in the course, one of the things I do is only use the word relapse at the very start, because it's not even useful to see it as a relapse. There's a thing we want to do. We ran into a situation where we're struggling to do the thing we want to do. So let's stop, look at how that happened, what are the challenges, and then we make changes so that we don't run into those challenges in the future. And so like now relapse isn't something I would worry about, just because I've learned so much from the relapses in the past on how to prevent them and be proactive with them. And so take it as a learning opportunity. You're going to get better and stronger, but make sure it is a learning opportunity. What went wrong? How do you change that in the future? Chris, he said my squishy rich blob, excuse me, is really latching on to health anxiety at the moment. I recently had my first vaccine, and the blob keeps telling me I'm going to get really bad side effects. All right, could you want to have bad side effects and be awesome at having them? Oliver, he said, since I did a stream on depression, when you're doing some YouTube videos on them, soon. It's part of it. We'll see. The stream this Wednesday might be on depression again, but there. And then I'll take stuff from the streams and turn them into YouTube videos. Alex said, how to deal with shame. I'm currently working on driving anxiety on the highway, and I don't want my dad to know. Right there. So often, the brain doesn't really care about the topic. So much of this stuff is just looking for the compulsions, where we're trying to avoid and control a thing that we judge as bad. And so what's called experiential avoidance. You could really look at experiential avoidance as a very fundamental pattern across mental health challenges, mental illness diagnoses. It's really useful to step into whatever it is we're trying to avoid. At the same time, I find our way of approaching mental health as a society hasn't helped us with this. Like we've approached mental health, mental illness from a very problem-based focus, right? So we give people disorders. Right? We say, oh, like but even this, like you're fixing driving anxiety. And I find that actually isn't useful. I find it much more useful to look to how we handle physical fitness. But I don't go to the gym to fix a strength disorder. I don't run to fix an endurance disorder. Like we talk about it as building skills. Like I want to get better at running. I want to improve strength with weightlifting. And I encourage people to take a similar approach. With something like driving, I would talk about wanting to get good at driving. And it becomes something you can talk about with your family, and because a lot of people will love to share their like driving skills and driving tips. And so presenting it as like, I don't have this problem I need to fix, but looking at what is the skill I want to grow. And I would say for everybody around anything mental health related, it's so much more useful to learn how to swim and take swimming lessons than it is to fix a drowning disorder and try to avoid drowning. One, people can support you with, like there's a place you want to go. The other, it's like, oh, you have a problem and you're going to avoid something. So flip it to the skills you want to build. Oliver said, how do you deal with sadness because school is over and there's nothing to do? It's really useful to learn how to create our own things to do rather than relying on something else to give it to us. Because actually that's often one thing I always tell people with the brain, like the brain's really helpful. And so if we're accustomed to always reacting to stuff passively, like somebody else tells me something to do and I do it, or somebody else makes a bunch of people come together and then I take advantage of that. If we're always in that passive position, when we have nothing to do, the brain might say, oh, wow, you've got nothing to do. I will give you something to do. Here, go fix this intrusive thought, or like go solve this physical sensation. And we don't want the brain to have to do that. So it can really help to look at what do you want to create and build in the world, and then you take yourself there. Missy Reviews UK said, I used to suffer from anxiety attacks for months. It stopped, and I don't know why. So it was something that I find super important, is actually not basing mental health skills around the presence or absence of a feeling, but actually looking at compulsion. So going online, checking like, why is it stopped? Even like questioning that, like that's the compulsion. And so sure, a particular feeling experience might not be there right now, but that chasing certainty and checking, that's going to create more problems in the future. So actually, yeah, if anxiety attacks are there, that is awesome. We're going to do things we value. If the anxiety attacks are not there, that is awesome. We're going to do things that we value. Right? Across the board, I always say the presence or absence of a feeling has nothing to do with mental health. Which sounds weird. We very much approach mental health as being about like, how do you feel? And I didn't find that useful. Kimberly, this is a great, you touched on something really awesome here. You said, when you fly a plane, your brain can tell you you're moving in a certain direction when you're not, which is why you have to trust the instruments. Yeah, this is exactly, I find that flying and pilots, there's so many elements of flying that are such great metaphors and examples of how we've really got to look at what we value, and we do stuff that other people might be like, oh, isn't that scary or isn't that dangerous? And be like, okay, like fine, but we do the things that we value, we do the practice well, and we take ourselves places. And yeah, often, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, often that means kind of parking the brain. Like, brain, you have a seat here. The instruments are going to replace you. Yeah. Adrian said, I'm trying to see the journey more as a roller coaster. I find it easier to get on track when I notice I'm off track. Totally. Yeah, so useful with understanding what that track is, so we can start to prevent those relapses. And and it's okay for that track to feel kind of wild. Rithvik said, my deepest fear is the fear of rejection. I've done some awkward compulsions. I'm just gonna move the chat window here. I realized I had it super small on another computer screen. Rithvik, sorry, we'll start again. My deepest fear is the fear of rejection. I've done some awkward compulsions around this fear. I haven't confessed or tried to talk to people just because I'm scared of losing them. Yeah, and this is you see though how the anxiety loves irony, right? We're afraid of rejection, and so what do? We actually avoid people, the very thing that we want to get closer to. And so yeah, it's so useful to identify how we want to nourish ourselves with social interaction, and then practice that consistently, not putting the brain in charge. Because the brain will just always, as a reaction to fear, the brain will always create the thing that we're afraid of. So if we're afraid of rejection, we're going to, start to, not talk to people because we're afraid of losing them. And what's the result of that? People are going to be like, oh, he doesn't, really seem to care about us or hang out with us. So yeah, we're not going to, invite him out or talk to him, or it seems like he doesn't like us. Like, it seems like he's rejecting us. And then see you later. So it's so useful to see that fear, understand what we value doing, and then practice that consistently. Trusting in ourselves, saying like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I might get rejected, but I also trust in my practice of building relationships and connection. And so, yeah, if that person rejects me, that's great. That's fine. And I'll build other relationships. Enjoy building those, even when you're scared. Adrian, yeah, a yoga practice is really great for, like you said there, I've noticed doing yoga has been really helpful for that. And so this is like staying on track, teaching myself how to get back into the practice once I've gotten out of it for a couple of days. Totally. Because you see too how if we fall out of a practice, we've been doing something, we've been practicing something, and now we're kind of like not in the practice anymore. We get stiff, or some things might be a little more difficult, and that's okay. It's understandable. And then we also see how we can actually just step right back into the practice again and get back into it. And it's totally doable. Now, super committee, you asked something. I don't even. You're gonna have to explain this to me. Your question is: does anyone know how to start a healthy cycle of thoughts? What could that possibly mean? What is a healthy cycle of thoughts? Oh, Kevin, I'm glad you found these tools useful. It's it's a huge honor to be part of people's lives as they're navigating challenges, and so I'm really glad you found those useful for continuing the adventure through life. Thank you. I lost the chat here. I'm getting it back. Steph, yes, is there a way I can watch old WWMD from 2 months ago? They're useful, but unfortunately I missed them. So they're up right after. I think they're only up for a month though, because I'm not a Twitch partner. You'll have to see, you'd have to see if it's there. Like they're always saved on my channel. So if you go to twitch.tv/MarkWFreeman, the WWMDs are always there, but I think they might only stay up for a month. You'd have to see. I don't take them down, but eventually Twitch, they expire. Sonics, he said, I was wondering if self-sabotage is an OCD compulsion. My doctor has advised me to cut back on fluids, but I found I'm drinking way more despite efforts. So I don't find it useful to categorize things as like OCD compulsions or other compulsions or whatever. Like compulsions are compulsions. And so self-sabotage is very often a compulsive behavior we engage in. And it's because we kind of get hooked on problems. It's one of the reasons I always say it's so important not to base mental health work around fixing problems, because then we actually make problems necessary for success, and we'll find we often keep creating problems. And so I wouldn't look at getting into, is this a OCD compulsion or another type of compulsion? What I would look at is, what do you want to be doing? So I assume fluids means like alcohol. If you want to be drinking less, then that is something you can do. And what we do is we look at that as any kind of change. So how do I value spending my time and energy? And then what are the challenges that are going to come up if I want to make this change? And then what are the actions that are going to support me? And it can really help to put the focus on those support actions rather than the far off goal of saying like, okay, I want to drink less. What we do is look at drinking less as an outcome. What's it an outcome of? So we would look at, what do you do that keeps leading to you drinking a lot? And how do we change that? And we just stick to those support practices and make them what our actions are about each day. The natural outcome of that is that we end up drinking less. So yeah, that's what I would look at. Yeah. Doesn't matter how you label the compulsion. What's the thing you want to be doing? Chris, yes, can you explain how worrying is a compulsion? It's worrying. We're just trying to chase certainty and control. But it's the brain kind of just loves doing it. And it'll just, what about this? What about this? And we'll be like, okay, let's go think about that. Let's go control that. And then the brain will be like, oh, and what about this? Okay, let's go control that. Go control that. And so that is actually why, some of you may not have caught this. At the very start, you'll see the title image was the sticky note. This is let recovery be easy. And at first I was going to write recovery is easy, but I thought some people might just be angry about that and not get it. But as well, I could say recovery is easy. And the reason for that is because struggling with and practicing mental illness is, a lot of work. It is so much work, in part because we do things like ruminate all the time. All of that worrying is work, where the brain is like, oh, you haven't thought about this. And then we're like, okay, I'm gonna go chase certainty about that. Let's go think about that. The brain's like, oh, but what about this? Okay, I'm gonna go fix and control that. It's tons and tons of work. And I would say a key recovery support is actually noticing when the brain is trying to get us to do all of this extra work and letting it be easy, which means I'm not going to chase it. I'm not going to spend my time and energy in my head. I'm not going to spend my time and energy outside of my head, asking for reassurance, Googling, researching, trying to control, and all of that. And so, yeah, look for when your brain is trying to make you work super, super extra hard, and then make it easy. Recovery is going to be easier than mental illness. I'm rolling up my sleeves because we're doing hard work now, but easily, with ease. Even things like when we talk about meditation and mindfulness, or especially things like mindfulness, it's not hard work. The hard work is distracting ourselves and time traveling all of the time. Being present is easier. And so explore how to make it easy. Focusing is easy because we just have to do one thing. Distracting ourselves and trying to do 50 million different things at the same time, that is hard work. Let recovery be easy. Lalton said, on the topic of finding something to do, I already found myself a goal and have planned it almost as like a work. However, struggling a lot to focus on it and progress. Any tips? You know what you could look at there? Even like we were just talking about with making drinking less as an outcome, even with projects and things like that, it can really help to break it down, any kind of project, any kind of business thing, any kind of school project, creative project, into the support actions and make the focus on those. So, for example, if somebody had a goal of writing a book, they might not actually focus on the goal of I have to make this book, but they might just say, I write 1,000 words every day. It can sometimes be easier to do things when we remove that kind of big goal, because then we're not doing some kind of big project. I'm just doing 1,000 words each day. Doesn't matter if they're good, if they're bad, whatever. I just engage in this support practice that's really useful to me. Or it might be they say, look, I write 1,000 words and publish them each day to a writing group that I'm part of and get feedback. And again, it's going to be that support activity, which is in the end going to lead to the goal they want. So that's what I would take a look at there with whatever it is the thing is you want to do. How could you break it down into an activity you can do today and celebrate just today's activity and make that activity easy? Rithvik, on the topic of the fear of being rejected, you said, I think that if I do what I love, people will move away from me. Is it possible to overcome this fear? It's been there forever. So often we're afraid of losing things, right? A lot of the struggle is going back to what I was talking about with the toilet, and we carry the toilet around with us. So much of the struggle with mental health stuff is that we try to cling to things and hold on to things, and we want them to be static. We do this a lot with feelings. We're afraid of, oh no, what if, I get into a relationship and it feels really good and then I lose it and I lose that feeling? Or yeah, what if I become close to somebody and they go away or something happens to them? And trying to hold on to these things creates a lot of struggle and suffering. And so it's very useful to learn how to let things go and to see that the world is something that's constantly changing. And it's okay to enjoy things, and it's okay to feel bad when we lose things. And see, that's part of the human experience. It's part of the human roller coaster. So you said that, is there a way to overcome this fear? But sometimes we think that means like I only want to feel good. But no, like losing people can feel bad. It's not about we have to somehow get rid of that feeling. It's recognizing that you could lose people and you can feel bad about that. And that feeling can be there. That feeling can be there while you build relationships with people. And that's okay. We don't have to hold on to these things. Right now, we can enjoy them. Tomorrow, the world could be hit by a meteor and wiped out. So let's enjoy building relationships with people and our community and connecting with people and doing things we value today. Moskvin, yes, said, my brain doesn't need a tune-up. I just need to throw it away and get a new one. Exactly. We are promoting spleens. Spleens, the ideal replacement to brains. Your spleen hasn't caused you any problems today, has it? No. It's because spleens are great. Although I have been told spleens do also cause people problems. Alberto said, given the variety of important problems there are, climate change, politics, poverty, corruption, what's your way of not being paralyzed by them and taking action? And so I think the take action piece is really key because the same thing, if we look at the world, we'll see all sorts of problems. The same thing can happen with our brains being like, oh, you've got to work on this and you haven't done this and you have to go do this. And, you've got to go find a relationship and you've got to take care of this financial thing. And should you get a new job and should you move to a new place? And, oh no, there's this disaster. You have this family problem, so on. It can do that. And, oh, you've got to go fix thoughts and this feeling, etc. But also when we look around the world, we can see all of these very real problems. And if anything, they're growing. When you look at what's been happening with Palestine, you look at inflation in Lebanon right now, the coup in Myanmar, we've got what's happening in China, we've got North Korea, volcanoes erupting in the Democratic Republic of the Congo right now, in Goma, people fleeing that, a pandemic, what's been happening in India. Like I haven't even scratched the surface, right? There's so much more going on. Then we look at inequality and racism, in North America. There is a lot. On top of that, we have climate change coming on very rapidly. We are going to blow through that 2-degree temperature increase target. It's a lot. And what we can do, though, is just like we do with our brain throwing up a lot, is look at what we can do and actually get involved in that. Recognizing, there's all sorts of stuff coming up. I'm not going to be able to fix and control all of that stuff, but what can I create and build? And bringing it back to an action that we can do and we can contribute. The brain, just like it does with recovery, tries to make everything big. It's like we were talking about there with drinking less. You have to do the whole thing. And then we try to do this big thing and we kind of fall down with it. And so seeing no, you don't have to do the super, you don't have to fix all of the world. But looking at, okay, what do I want to get engaged with in my community? And I'm going to give time and energy towards that. Because when we all commit to getting involved in our communities and taking action to create a better world, a community that's welcoming to everybody, that's safe for everybody, that's healthy for everybody, then we start to move in a better direction. But if we go, oh, it's too much, what can I do? Then we just kind of sit there and the world kind of spins in the way it's been spinning. So yeah, absolutely. We see a ton of things that we could react to, but how are we going to give our time and energy towards building something that we can do? And so often it's just getting started on that. Joining different groups, starting something online, and building community around something that's healthy for ourselves and our world. Mm-hmm. Maha, Knuffle, welcome. Thank you for explaining who you were, so everybody from the Discord server knows. He said, I struggle mostly with procrastination and finding the balance between taking rest and doing work. Anyone have tips for this? So one of the things I find so key with procrastination is to see that it's just like any other compulsion. And actually, it's so great to work on procrastination as a way to tackle some of the compulsions we may see as bigger. And the reason for this is because procrastination, we're just, right, a thought, a feeling comes up and we go, oh, I don't want to do that right now because of this brain stuff. It's telling me I should do it later. It'll be better later, or I don't feel like it right now. And maybe it's kind of small, but what we're doing there is teaching the brain that, brain, if you throw up a bad feeling or thought or a good reason, I will put it in charge of my actions. And that doesn't seem like a big deal until later when the brain throws up something that really bothers us. And then it's so difficult to go against that because we've taught the brain that we'll, put a random uncomfortable feeling in charge of our lives. So now when the brain's like, hey, this is much bigger than an uncomfortable feeling, I'm telling you somebody's going to die, it's very difficult not to react to that. So yeah, procrastination can be great to work on seeing that it's a really key component of the bigger picture. And that's going to be about wanting to do things while uncomfortable, right? To notice it and be like, yeah, I feel like putting it off right now, or wanting to do things when you can think of a million reasons not to do them right now. And then we get unreasonable. And we're like, fine, I'm going to do it right now. Adrian, yes, do you find that baseline feelings do change, though, over time as you recover? I've definitely noticed the number of emotions I have and the types of emotions I have on a day-to-day has changed a bit. Absolutely. I would, so much of the journey of recovery, I would say, is like learning how to have emotions again, or for the first time. And there's all sorts of emotions, I would say, because I spent decades of covering them up with compulsions. So I didn't know what they were. And also struggling with compulsions for so long was actually relying on bad emotions. As much as I would, would say, oh, I want to get rid of these emotions, I relied on having them every day so that I could control them. So I would say that the baseline emotions do change because it was about building around values. And so because I didn't need problems and I didn't need anxiety or need intrusive thoughts to motivate action, the brain starts to throw them out less. Oh, Penny, thank you so much for the kind message. It is an honor to be part of your journey. Z1 or Z1, depending on where you are, said, I've overcome my anxiety from intrusive thoughts. They were very disturbing, but through ERP by myself and learning not to react, I've stopped being stressed. But my thoughts won't go, and I overthink. Yes, it really helped me to see that ERP is about cutting out compulsions. So it's not about trying to get rid of a feeling like stress or anxiety. It's about cutting out the compulsions. And so that includes the mental compulsions. So that overthinking, it can really help us start to see that that's a mental compulsion. And so whether the anxiety is there or not, irrelevant. It's about, do you want to do that action? And so it's really useful to learn how to cut out actions like that. So there's a video, if you go on my YouTube channel and look up, I think it's called Understanding Mental Compulsions, that might help explain how to start tackling that. Oh, and Squidge just brought up a really awesome point that Squidge has been doing this. I appreciate so much, an incredible community service to capture notes after the streams on Twitch and then shares them on the Discord server. So also there are those notes there. And Squidge, yeah, thank you so much for doing that. Oliver said, how to overcome the thought and fear of relapsing on depression and OCD. This, again, there's a video on my channel called Checking into Relapse, and it is precisely about this. Because if we start doing compulsions to control a fear, we've already relapsed. And so I would look at that. Yeah, because if the fear of going back to OCD and depression is no different than any other fear. It's no different than a fear of like, what if the world ends tomorrow? What if I catch a horrible disease? I mean, and which it's pretty much the same thing. Like typically if somebody has that fear, they've also had a fear around health stuff as well, or derealization, depersonalization, any of the controlling fears. It's just a part of it. So we also got to cut out the compulsions around that. And we do that by shifting the focus to how do I proactively build mental health skills? I'm not here to avoid a problem. right? I'm not here to just avoid drowning. I want to be awesome at swimming. So having that practice in our lives, because if we don't, we're just like, I'm not going near the beach. Then it's kind of natural that we'll still worry about, well, what if I get pushed into the water? I don't know how to swim. Yeah, so go and get swimming lessons. Mm-hmm. Alex said, I've been trying to do what I value no matter what, but my brain tells me that I shouldn't be around others when I'm not feeling good, as I'll be irritable or not present. What should I tell my brain? What I found useful to do there is actually see that my brain doesn't understand language, right? My brain doesn't understand English. Especially the fear parts of the brain are much more fundamental, and so I've got to show my brain. And so there would be about showing my brain that I can go and be with people. And the question I would always bring up first is, before going to be with people in a situation like that, is what do I want to give people? And so it might be you want to give attention. You want to listen mindfully to other people. So you're going to go with people, you're going to notice your brain getting irritated, wanting to control stuff, running off, and coming back to what you want to give. Oh yeah, I want to give people my attention. Okay, brain, I get it. You're irritated, you want to go and control stuff, but here's what I want to do. And it's through the showing our brains that we can't tell it. It's gotta be, we gotta show it. Brains understand actions, not words. Mona, so anything I could preventively do to support my mental health during pregnancy? I'm about to receive my second child. During my first pregnancy, my OCD really leveled up, and it took me a long time. Yeah, so congratulations. It's great to get proactive with this. And so one of the things, if you're working with somebody, talking through like what happened last time and how that happened, to really understand that it's the brain is going to want to control stuff. There's stuff happening in your body. There's going to be stuff happening around you with lots of uncertainty. And so it's very natural that the brain is going to want to help by trying to control things. And so based on what you've learned before, you can probably see the types of things your brain will react to and try to control. And then it's looking at, okay, how do I give my brain compassion when it does that? I see why it's doing that. And here's an action I actually want to do that's going to support me instead. And so, maybe taking that time, even mapping it out. I always love to draw out these things. Like what's the journey of, where my pregnancy is at and where it's going and what's going to support me on that way. And based on that journey, you probably also see, oh, here are the points where the brain is going to try to control stuff. So how do I put supports in place in advance? So when my brain does that, it's not a problem. I knew it was going to do that. Give it a hug and show it something I'd rather do instead. Mm-hmm. Oh, Dave, thank you. I'm so glad you found it helpful. Jeremiah, he said, finally in recovery from harm OCD and violent intrusive thoughts, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Congratulations on the hard work there. The best advice I could give that Mark really began to highlight for me was that it begins and ends with you. Stop labeling thoughts. All right, thanks for sharing that for everybody on the similar journeys. It's so useful to see. It's got nothing to do with the thoughts, right? It's how we interact with this stuff. Joseph, you said, can focusing on something rather than ruminating be a compulsion? No, it depends on what it is. Like if you're doing another compulsion, but it's so useful to see the ruminating is the compulsion. And I think there's often one of the places where the fear of, oh no, what if I relapse comes up? And one of the ways the brain gets us trapped is because we've spent so much time doing compulsions and reacting to stuff in our heads that it feels wrong to go and do something we value. And we feel like, oh no, I'm avoiding this. And so we end up staying with the compulsion because we're afraid that by dropping the compulsion, we're avoiding it. When the reality, it's it's the opposite. The staying with this thing we actually don't care about, that's the compulsion. And so it's really useful to look at walking off the battlefield. As long as we stay on the battlefield and we're like, no, there are enemies here. I must expose myself to the fear of the enemies and I will defeat them. We're just going to keep this cycle going and going and going and going. And it's so much more useful to walk off the battlefield and say, yeah, like I don't have to do anything with the stuff in my head. I'm just going to go and give my time and energy to things I care about in the world. Or like we were talking about earlier, like there's so many things in the world that I can start proactively working on and caring for. I don't have to give my time and energy to ruminating. Maybe I want to get involved in my community and build something awesome there. One of the things I find so key, and we were just talking about this on the Discord server, and it's been coming up a lot, is the kind of ultimate ERP exercise around this fear is to not spend any time on the brain stuff. Because we get this idea, I think people get stuck on the idea that like ERP means exposing yourself to a fear and cutting out a compulsion. But if your fear is that I need to stay with this thought, I need to expose myself to this thought or I won't get over it. If that's your fear, then the ERP exercise is to walk away from it. Because the brain thinks you're doing something super dangerous. It's like, wow, you can't walk out of here. This disaster is going to happen. And so you give this huge vote of confidence in yourself to be like, yeah, okay, fine. It's going to happen. And I will handle it and do the things I care about, like I'm going to go and do right now. Because that's the fear, right? The fear is that you can't walk away from it or something bad will happen. But that's what gets us stuck. Squidge, you said recently you talked about when you sat down to write or be creative, you would outline what you want to give in that session. Could you explain more about that? Yeah, absolutely. I find, and this is great for anybody, like whether you're doing a creative project, like you're writing a book, but really any work. It's to give yourself that kind of anchor, just saying, what do I want to give here? So that you can be successful. Because we so often are just working on things and they seem really big. And so we always feel like we're never getting anywhere. It's just to look and say, okay, if I've got 30 minutes, what do I want to give? Making sure that that thing you want to give is something you can give in 30 minutes so that we can give it and feel successful and know when to step away. I find this really key, if it's like me, like you work on your own. So there's, and I've worked from home for several years, so I could always be working. And there's always so much more to do because there's only me. And so I have a million ideas and I don't have time to do them all. So it's so useful to identify, okay, what do I want to give so that you can step away, so you can walk off the battlefield. Because if I didn't, I was like, there's this big thing I'm working on. I value creating mental health tools and making recovery accessible. Well, there's so much more to do. I should never leave my computer, but it's useful to step away. So identifying what you want to give also allows you to say, look, I gave it. Yes, brain, of course, there are 5 million other things I could do, but I'm going to go and, go for a run. I'm going to go get some groceries. I'm going to go take care of myself. Yeah, we'll come back later and we'll do some more. But right now I'm going to take a break because I was successful. And so it's so useful to see yourself consistently as successful. And that's part of identifying what you want to give. Well, Isabel, and so you brought up a great thing. This is going back to the idea of let recovery be easy. So let recovery be easy is a great idea, but could cause confusion when we consider that cutting compulsions increases anxiety, potentially. So easy doesn't mean feeling good. Exactly. But at the same time, when anxiety increases, it's a great opportunity to be like, yeah, brain, I'm letting it be easy, so I'm not going to do any extra work around that. Because again, the reason the brain increases anxiety or intrusive thoughts or physical sensations is because it's trying to get you back into doing that work. And so it's seeing, right, cut out compulsions, you're doing less work. And then the brain's like, no, you should do more work, control this. And you got to, again, be like, nope, it's going to be easy. Oh, Adrian, I see you made the poster about memory. Yeah, it'd be great to do another one on memory, exploring. There's a lot of great research been coming out on memory that also is so useful to how we understand mental health stuff, because so much of the research on memory shows just how unreliable it is. But when we're struggling with our mental health, we so often put a lot of importance on memories and feeling right about memories. So yeah, thanks for suggesting that. We'll definitely do another stream on memories. Silent Spaces, thank you so much for the donation and the support. Yeah, and always being such an active member of our community. Here's to having feelings and more walks in the wilderness. Indeed. Thank you so much, and please enjoy all of the adventures in the wilderness. Sometimes there'll be feelings that'll join you on those walks, and other times not. So yeah, thank you so much, Silent Spaces, for the support. KF said, "What's good? Donuts are good." Answer that question. And then you asked, is it related to OCD when we have anger toward the way certain people treated us in the past and having intrusive thoughts about it? Yes. It's so great to see that a lot of just what the brain wants to do is get us into controlling. And there's all sorts of different ways the brain can get us go, okay, I'm going to control this thing. And so, yeah, sometimes it might be the brain throws up an intrusive thought and we're like, how do I get rid of this thought? Like maybe it's a false memory or something like that. And, we do lots of things to control a thought. Other times it might be a physical sensation. So the brain will throw up whatever we get upset about and want to control. And so, like you brought up there, one of the things that can do that is around bringing up a memory from the past where somebody treated you in a way you didn't want them to. And it's because we're just, oh yeah, I want to fix that. But the brain loves to do this because, of course, we're not time travelers. We can't control that. We can't fix that. It's what we want to do there. What I found so helpful is acknowledging that it hurt. So it's not about pretending like, no, forget about it. It's fine. No, like that hurt. You're noticing the hurt. But then we want to show the brain, because the brain's like, yeah, let's go fix that. Let's go fight them. To be like, brain, that happened in the past. It's not controllable. And also, we don't want to take that out on somebody else right now in the present and try to control them because of something that happened to us in the past. So we want to give ourselves compassion, understand where that pain comes from, and then look at how we want to proactively set boundaries in the present to really let our brain know, hey, you know what? Yeah, you know what? That hurt. I don't have to go back and fix that. But look, in the future, in this moment, brain, you can trust me. I'm going to proactively set boundaries. I'm going to articulate what I want because I learned. Yeah, okay, that was painful in the past. And here's what I want to build and create now. And we got to take our attention there. While giving ourselves compassion for the pain we experienced in the past. But seeing that if we try to get into lots of controlling around the past, we're not going to control the past. We're only going to hurt ourselves. Mm-hmm. Thad, you said effortless is how you describe recovery. It's beautiful. Any suggestions for avoiding other people's thoughts? They can be intrusive and too awesome, burdensome. How to build confidence in me. So I find the confidence is something we've got to show the brain. And so it'll often feel risky. And recognizing that confidence comes after we do the things we care about, not before. And that's, so it's we won't build confidence so that we can go and do something we care about. Confidence is like strength. It involves doing a lot of things that make us feel weak. And we keep doing them. And then the natural outcome of that is strength or confidence. But it's totally okay if we just keep feeling weak while we do those things because we're doing things that we want to do. super committee. Sit here. I'm just saying I'm tired of all the negative thoughts and reconciliation I have. I just want to be surrounded by positive memories. Since real event stuff is my thing, I just want a healthy week. Yeah, so I would see that as a compulsion. I would expect that to create more of the stuff we don't like. Unfortunately, it can really help to want to have any thought or feeling. Because if we're like, oh, I shouldn't have this thought, it's bad, I need to get rid of it, then the brain's like, you mean this one? You want to get rid of this here, this? Here's more, so you can feel good about getting rid of them. And that's just how the brain it does what it does. Dubbin said some friends have mental health issues. I worry if I can't always be there for them. Bad things may happen to them, and it can lead to me wanting to control, check a lot, and not do things for myself. It's understandable, right? We see something going wrong, and of course, we're like, I want to control this. I want to make sure something bad doesn't happen. But it quickly gets us into the compulsions, just like anything, where we're like, oh, there's this bad thing could happen. I must control it. And in doing that, we often end up creating bad things, even whether it's we're not taking care of ourselves. So then we begin to have problems ourselves, and then we need somebody to come and rescue us. And so it's like jumping in the water because we see somebody drowning, but then we actually don't know how to swim, and now we've got two people drowning. So it can really help. And even though it seems weird, I find it so important to emphasize. And I talk about this a lot with people who want to get into whether you want to be a mental health therapist, coach, peer support worker, just general friend that knows about mental health. Actually, I always tell people, don't help people. Learning how to take care of your own mental health proactively then gives you something that you can share with others, and that they will find helpful. But yeah, if we just jump in the water because we're like, something bad is going to happen, more bad things can happen. Into eternal peace. He said, I've got a good job offer, but I fear leaving home will make OCD worse. What to do? Well, so I approach OCD as something we learn mental health skills to cut out. And a great way to do that is also by doing the things we value well, learning how to accept uncertainty. So I would look at that. I mean, yeah, if you're finding compulsions are getting in the way, you can absolutely start to cut them out. OCD is totally something you can leave behind. But also, yeah, taking a job that is the thing you want to do is also a great practice of cutting out compulsions. Alberto, you're welcome. Justin, yes. Do I know a monk named Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche? I only learned about teacher Rinpoche. Rinpoche, I think actually is how it's pronounced, right? Recently, but actually, and I learned about him through one of his students who was giving talks, and I noticed his student used a lot of the same language that we'll often talk about, particularly around getting and giving, because that was the first time I'd heard that being talked about as, like when we're trying to get stuff, we're doing a lot of really unhealthy things. And so, it's totally, I would say in some ways totally random, but at the same time, I mean, we're talking about the same stuff. And so I think it's natural that multiple people would arrive at the same conclusions. But also I've seen, and when I learned more about his stuff recently, he actually, and I can't remember the term he uses to describe it, but you know how when I'm talking about letting recovery be easy and even resting in awareness, he has a term for that as well that I think is a bit different, but he shares a lot on how to be focused, how to be aware, relaxed. right? So resting in that relaxed awareness. So again, seeing that this work is, it's about ease. It's about resting in awareness. And so absolutely, I think a great teacher to check out. Mm-hmm. And his student who I had learned about his work through is named John Dunn. And I find you can actually find more talks online if you look up John Dunn, like probably John Dunn Dharma talks, or John Dunn is a professor of Buddhist studies and a Buddhist monk. And I believe at a university in the US, maybe Minnesota or Wisconsin, one of those. And you can find a lot of his work online, perhaps even more easily. But I think Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche has a lot of YouTube videos. So absolutely check it out. It's quite similar. And I think that's, because we're talking about the same stuff. Brain stuff. Dark Ghost said, I often feel the need to prove to others that I'm very good at something, especially in the workplace where being judged is the norm. This mechanism often leads me to turn, passions into obsessions. In this way, I experience less and less pleasure in life, and I also notice that the quality of my relationships gradually worsen. So it's great that you can see this happening. And now it's about asking, like, how do you want to spend your time and energy instead, in a way that's creative and proactive, right? That's about giving, not trying to get. And actually, this kind of just what we were just talking about is a great example. When we're trying to get stuff, we're trying to get validation from other people. We're trying to get certainty about how we'll be seen from other people. We're trying to get control of how we're perceived in the workplace. It's always going to pull us off course. And now it could be really useful to look at work from a perspective of what do you want to give, and recognize, there's all sorts of things that you won't control, and the brain will worry. It'll be like, oh no, this bad thing will happen and that bad thing will happen. I mean, we'll say, okay, maybe they will happen, but I'm going to give the things that I value giving, and I'm gonna be happy about doing that. Because this is about me. This is about me creating the things I want to create in the world. MD Firdaus Ahmed, you said, why axes not to use restructuring methods? So, I mean, maybe if you could explain a bit more, I can give you a more specific example. But offhand, I would say it's because it'll actually be a compulsion. It'll almost 100% make things worse. Is why ACT would approach it that way. Mm-hmm. It works in theory. It sounds good in a book, but in practice, that's why ACT would not hop on board that. Squidge said, I guess with rest, it's about building rest into our lives proactively and having a framework besides our feelings about when we choose to rest. Example, people often rest the day after exercise. Yeah, it's having rest as a practice so that we can notice, right? Because sometimes the brain's like, rest, go take a break. And we're able to say, no, like actually, this is coming back to that awareness with ease. You know what? I can be tired, and also I can be aware and practice being me. Other times we may actually feel like, no, I can do more. Let's do more. And actually, like I was talking about earlier, it's useful to say, no, I'm going to step away. I can actually take that energetic feeling and go and enjoy a walk. We can rest with energy, rest with enjoyment. It's so weird, right, as a society that we only do these kind of enjoyable practices when we feel terrible. It's just like, you've got to feel really terrible to earn enjoyment, so that we're always kind of like tired or miserable when we're doing the most enjoyable things. It's okay to have energy and like be awesome at rest. Mm-hmm. It is a good time. No, MD Ferguson said, why access not to change thoughts and beliefs? So I would clarify, though, I think you'll find actually it's quite common or an active practice in ACT to change beliefs. But changing thoughts, it would be seen as like, it's like changing the weather. But beliefs, I would say, and that's something we talk about a lot, right? How to change beliefs. And in general, ACT would be there's a lot of exercises in ACT that are about helping you change beliefs, and show your brain healthier beliefs. So I would differentiate between those two. Rithvik, indeed, ruminating is a thing you do. And you said, are we really in charge of our lives, or are we watching everything like a movie? Does it even matter? Yeah, I mean, trying to figure that out. Here's the thing: if the moment an uncertainty like that pops up, and then we're like, I got to go figure this out, we're at that moment not in charge, because we've taken some random brain indigestion and put it in charge of our lives. And then we feel like we're just on rails chasing something. So yeah, it's more about learning how to notice stuff in the head and be like, no, like I'm gonna go and do the things I want to do. All about Grande said, you've helped me tremendously with intrusive thoughts. I'm glad you found it helpful. I had a horrible fear of harming a loved one of mine and felt so much guilt because they suffered from suicidal thoughts, and are getting better. I felt horrible for having such thoughts and wondered why it came along. I'm glad you found these skills helpful with navigating that. Right, the brain does throw up so much nasty indigestion. Super committee. Okay, you said one more question. My therapist said, you need to do something physical as a compulsion, and thoughts aren't a compulsion. Is this true? I would disagree with your therapist. Just like Ethan said, very false, in my opinion. Yeah, it's the same. Checking something in your head, no different than checking. If I'm checking memories, it's no different than me checking Google. If I'm checking a feeling, again, yeah, no different than me checking. I'm like, ooh, is this feeling bad? Is something bad going to happen? That's no different than me being like, ooh, is that thing over there bad? Is something bad going to happen? Same thing. It's really useful to see the patterns we engage in our heads are no different than the patterns we engage in outside of our heads. So I always find that really important to emphasize to people too, because often somebody will see this come up a lot where somebody says, oh, I'm doing everything I value, but I'm the thoughts are still there, or the anxiety is still there. How do I get rid of it? But that means they're not doing things they value inside their heads. And it's really useful to start to see that doing things we value is an alignment of what we're doing in our heads and outside of our heads. And so they got to go together. No, I wouldn't separate between like, oh, this is an action and that's a thought. So they're different. Just scrolling. I'm scrolling, trying to find. I will have a sip from my happy monk. Action! Exclamation mark. I was like one of those. Yeah, or even the question: eat bagels? Absolutely. Bagels are like bread donuts. Oh, and maybe that's because there is a welcome to viewer bagel. You have a great name. I hope there's somebody out there with like a donut handle. Yes. Now, speaking of thoughts and action, here, Ma, you brought up something that's really key. You said, I think it helps me to differentiate between thoughts, stuff that your brain comes up with, and thinking, the action you do to solve problems. Totally. And it's that thinking, the stuff we do in our heads, the stuff we choose to do in our heads, where the compulsions come in. Yeah. Because before I said thought, but really thinking is the better term. Right? They're both actions. Like, so really thinking about actions outside of our heads and actions inside of our heads. We're in charge of our actions. We're not in charge of the weather outside of our heads or the weather inside of our heads, but we are in charge of how we interact with the weather. Alex, so sit here. I had an anxiety attack on the highway entrance yesterday. I had to pull over. Breathing tech didn't help. Gave the car to my sis. Now I have the fear. I thought my brain a bad action. How can I go about? Can you explain a bit more? Even actually, I didn't understand what you meant by breathing tech. And although, like when you say like there's a fear there, I mean it's a fear like any other. But could you explain what you meant by breathing tech? Because I think there might be something we might want to talk about there. KF said, is OCD due to some microscopic neurological malfunctions? Does noticing that help with treatment? I did not have any kind of anything done to any microscopic or macroscopic neurological factors in getting over OCD. MD Ferdos, you said, is ACT therapy alone fully capable of freeing a person from an anxiety disorder, or integrating different intervention from different therapy like ACT, CBT, DBT, et cetera, more effective? So yeah, I would say yes. Like it's really useful to start to see that this work, like taking care of our mental health, is really like physical fitness. And so, because you could say, well, is any particular workout with a name? So we said, well, will CrossFit get you into good shape? Maybe, but it's still about the person doing the work. And the reality is too, that person exists in a complex system. So for example, so a great example would be the pandemic right now. So I was doing CrossFit before the pandemic. I'm not now because I'm at home. And so I've changed how I work out. If I stuck with CrossFit right now when I can't actually do the exercises, then yeah, I might not be in good shape, and we'd say, oh, CrossFit doesn't work. But that's not kind of an accurate statement, because the reality is I can't actually do the exercises given that my environment is quite different right now. And so it makes more sense, given my environment, to do a different type of workout. And the same is going to go for any kind of therapy approach that we stick a name on. We still really need to look at what that person needs and what's going to be most useful for them. Because absolutely any of those tools you mentioned, there's always going to be people who said, I got over my anxiety disorder with ACT, I got over OCD with ACT, I got over OCD with CBT, I got over my other mental illness diagnosis with DBT, etc. We're always going to find people who've had those experiences. We're also always going to find people who said, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. We've got to look at what is that person trying to do and how do we help them do it. Yeah. So Ian, like physical fitness, a great example for this. Just like if anybody ever says like the only way you can get in shape is by doing Zumba. Well, like maybe, and there'll always be people who did get in shape by doing Zumba. But then somebody else might have gotten in shape by doing Olympic lifting because their goals are different. Right? Somebody might see powerlifting as the best thing because that's the thing they really want to do and they want to get awesome at. Somebody else will get really into swimming because that's what they want to have in their life. So I'd always look at that. Yeah. What skills does that person want to build? What works for their life? Gorley, you said, have you done much research into using psychedelics and treating OCD? So I don't personally do research. I read about this a lot, and I've met people who have taken them. And so I've got to say, like, I've been around long enough that I've seen multiple new greatest thing that is going to be the best treatment ever come along. And yeah, like I don't, I haven't met anybody yet. I've met lots of people who have done it. Have I met anybody who like it somehow was this magical solution? No. Like whether you take something or you don't take something, you've still got to cut out the compulsions. Because if you can go and do psychedelics, but then if you go right back to doing the compulsions, it's not. It's like, yeah, again, like fitness. You'd be like, is whey protein the key to becoming super ripped? I mean, yeah, like lots of people who are athletes will use protein powders. It doesn't, they still have to do the actions that are going to contribute to great mental health, or in their case, physical fitness. Skunk Spray, glad you said your videos really helped me a while back with compulsions and intrusive thoughts. Thank you so much. I hope you're doing well. Thank you. I'm glad they were helpful. I hope you are doing well on this. If it's like summer where you are, having a good summer. I like everybody. We're having some coffee appreciation. There is not coffee in here now. There was coffee, but now it is just water. Oh, Gary, I'm glad you found these tools so helpful. All right, now we got people. We have people on the bagel and coffee train. Mm-hmm. Oh, Gary, please do keep thinking of those angry alpacas when your brain throws up thoughts. Denizen of light, hello, welcome. Thank you for stopping on by. Bagel said, "What is a normal day to you?" Oh, I see. No, you're asking super committee. And so, Alex, now you've come to explaining what the breathing tech was. It said breathing techniques. So this is what I was curious about. So I personally, I wouldn't see that as like when you're like breathing techniques didn't work. I wouldn't see that as helpful, and I would expect them not to work. Um, it can really, so what I would look at around panic attacks and anxiety attacks is start to look at them as how we get into them. Like, are we starting to check? Are we starting to control, judge physical sensations and things like that? Because what happens is we want to control things, and then we feel something we judge as bad, and then we're like, oh no, this is bad. Oh no, I'm not controlling things. I've got to control things more. And then we try to control and we check more. Oh no, is something going on? And it's how we actually create an anxiety attack. And so it can really help to maybe look at some of those compulsions. And then likewise, and the reason something like a breathing technique, because if we're like, oh no, I've got to control this feeling now. Here's the thing I'll do to control the feeling. The brain's like, what, this feeling? You want to control this feeling? Here, like, here's more of it. So you can try to control more of it. And it gets us into this control loop. That is not useful to start. So yeah, I always look at, once we have panic attacks, have them. It's great to want to have them, but then really start to look at how we create panic attacks, because that's where we can make useful changes. Sanji said, for a week, I thought I was doing things I value, but after that, I realized what I was doing was distracting myself from thoughts, and it's becoming more hard to do what I value. So I would look at Sanjeev like, well, why is it getting hard to do what you value? And that could be a great opportunity to make a change there, and maybe find something that'll support you. So how do you make doing what you value easy? MD Fritos, you said, what does ACT actually want to say when it says problem solving is bad for inner problems? Yeah, it's a really common saying in ACT that the solution is the problem. And that's because we're judging an experience as a problem and then it's going into this control mode. So what I was just describing there with panic attacks is a great example of that. The physical sensation or the uncertainty, where we're like, oh, I've got to not have a panic attack because a bad thing will happen if I do. By judging that as a problem we need to fix and solve, we actually create the panic attack. There's a lot of research showing that the fear of panic attacks is the number one trigger of panic attacks, because of precisely what you're asking about. The moment we go, whoa, this is a problem, we got to control it, the brain goes, oh no, that's a problem? Quick, try to control it. Oh no, we're not controlling it. And then it gets worse and worse. So judging it as a problem is the problem. There's nothing wrong with it. Have a thought, a horrible, violent thought, have anxiety, some pain. These are all things we can have. A feeling that we don't want to do something, a feeling that we do want to do something. Because likewise, it can be around stuff that we see as good, like, oh, I feel a craving for this thing right now. I feel the urge to go and do this thing, even though I told myself I wasn't going to do it anymore. We see that as a problem, like, oh, I won't be able to do my work unless I fix this urge. By judging it as a problem, we just fuel more and more compulsions. So yeah, so that's why ACT is all about seeing it as not a problem. Savani shared here, what helped in my journey, meditation for sure, but mostly accepting and being open to re-experiencing life and emotions and sticking to a specific goal, no matter how tiny it is. Oh, thanks for sharing that. There's so many useful things you shared in there. I love even the term re-experiencing life. That helped me so much to be curious about emotions and explore life like it was really for the first time. Precisely because I had so many compulsions and unhelpful beliefs about it in the past. So re-experiencing life is such a great adventure to go on, and really bringing the focus to those tiny goals. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Mike, so you said here, the last year, the relapses have been fewer and fewer. I relapsed 2 days ago for 3 to 4 minutes and regretted it very much because I was on a streak for months. What do you think about relapses? So I find it really useful to just approach just see there's life, and not not seeing it as like I relapsed for 3 to 4 minutes. It's so, because then we just get into these compulsions and we're checking and then we're like judging. Oh no, I messed up a thing. Because the brain wants us to see it that way. Oh, I messed up the big thing. Now I need to fix it, right? I need to go and do compulsions. I need to go and chase certainty, find out what it means. And so it's really useful to see, no, like I did a thing. Okay, do I want to do a different thing? Great, I'll do a different thing now. We can celebrate that awareness. So it can really help to ditch the whole concept of relapse. Sure, there'll be times where you step off the path. So hop right back on it. And so part of that I find is I always say recovery is not a big crystal piss pot. So actually not approaching it as streaks, that there's this like, oh, I'm creating this beautiful big thing that I cannot drop. That'll just actually, I find, end up in creating relapses, because the brain loves to get into controlling. So the brain figures out, well, the way to get you back into controlling is to get you to relapse. So then you like, oh, I've got to fix this. This is so bad. Oh, what does it mean? That's what'll keep happening. It was this sounds weird, but of course, so much of this stuff is always counterintuitive. So it'll be useful. It helped me so much to make it so much with not relapsing by making compulsions okay. Because as long as it's this bad thing, it's like we'll just keep on self-sabotaging so we have a new bad thing to fix. But if it's not a bad thing, it's just a thing you could choose to do. Well, why would you choose it? Because there's a much better thing to choose. And so I find it actually helped with not relapsing by really taking off the shame and the stigma and the fear around relapse. Joseph said, can you talk about changing beliefs? Yeah, I would say really about actions. And so exploring, so at first, just with beliefs, just starting to explore what your beliefs are, because we tend to take them for granted. We have all sorts of beliefs around emotions. We have all sorts of beliefs around, oh, I shouldn't feel this or I should feel that. And so to start with, just starting to explore it, like, what do you believe? And then looking at that, is that useful to you? Like if you believe, for example, oh, everybody should like me. Well, is that useful to you? How does that come up in your life? Is that a benefit to you or is it a barrier? And so just at first starting to explore it with curiosity. And then you look at how those beliefs affect your actions. And then you look at the beliefs that are more useful to you. And then you align your actions with those, because your brain is going to learn the new beliefs through actions, not through like telling your brain. So enjoy, to start off with, enjoy the exploration. Absolutely. Thad, please steal Crystal Piss Pot. Available. And Lewis, yeah, you asked there, do you change beliefs by your actions? Totally. But I think too, like really identifying what they are first. Because sometimes it's also, part of it's just noticing it too, because you'll notice this kind of pressure and momentum from the brain where it's like, oh, this is bad, go fix it. And being able to step back and be like, oh, I see, I have a belief that that's bad. But is that belief useful to me? Oh, okay. What's a more useful belief? Okay, brain, I'm going to go show you a more useful way of being, but I understand you believe that old way of doing things is better. Because when you go to do the new, healthier way, it's going to feel wrong. You're going to have to steal happiness. Alex, yes, what therapy is best for balancing out emotions while in the meantime learning how to take the actions to experience life and move forward with goals, like emotions of doubt and intrusiveness? Yeah, and so there might not be any kind of specific best therapy, right? I would look at like you know what your goals are there. So I'd look at, what, because you can really try out some different approaches, grab some books on some different approaches and see what you find useful. See what approach to therapy helps you accept that stuff and move forward towards your goals. Denizen of Light said, something that helps me is viewing my brain as a separate individual. Mm-hmm. When my brain throws up something that I know is bad or not true, I allow my brain to say what it wants without arguing with it. Yeah, so useful, right? You see it as a separate individual, a younger version of yourself, kind of afraid of something that happened in the past, or a monster trying to argue with you. It's so useful to see it as separate. Totally. Oh, Mike, I'm glad you found the videos helpful. We're coming up to the end, everybody, too. But I see we got another question here about writing final papers. We got a thesis coming up. Michelle, I hope your writing is going well. So do I have any advice on writing final papers? One, not seeing it as like, I've got to write this big final paper, break it down. And so whether it's about, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, you break it down into really distinct, solvable pieces, but really looking at, too, the support activities that are going to help you do it. So it's not about, I've got to go do my bachelor's thesis. It's that I write consistently or I research consistently this much each day, and really celebrating that. So turning the thesis into the actions today that are going to lead to the thesis soon, whenever that soon would be. Yeah. So I think everybody can do this for anything. You really look at what's that outcome and see, okay, it's not about that far off goal. It's about, what does that goal translate into today? Okay, I'm going to go and do that. And eventually I'll find that I'm at the place that I want to go to. Yeah. Enjoy it. Enjoy the writing. He said, my therapist described it as my brain and then the observer, which observes emotions. Totally. Kind of got this like weird appliance over here, like throwing up all this junk. And then, there's our observer noticing the junk that comes out. Miles, yeah, he said, do you know how to overcome writer's creative block? Absolutely, gotta create. And so again, not thinking of like, oh, I've got to create good things or write things, etc. It's like setting goals. I'm like, whatever it happens to be. So if it's writing, just saying, I write, start off 500 words a day. Does not matter what it's about. It's not about good, bad, etc. Or if it's like creating, it's like setting, you know what, I create an image every single day. Again, and two, you might share it. So especially good with images, because we have things like Instagram and stuff like that. Say, look, I am going to create a channel where I get 30 minutes to make an illustration, and then I immediately share it online. So you also just start to show the brain, like we are not listening to your brain. You don't get to judge it. We're sharing it no matter what. But you also show it that that's possible. It's not about getting it right. It also starts to change how we create. So if we say like, look, I have to share this in 30 minutes and I can't fix it, it starts to transform what we create and how we create. And that just gets the brain into a rhythm of creating. And so you could do the same with writing. Like I used to do a thing where I would say I had to publish a blog post by the end of my bus ride to work. And so I had to write it there too, which is like the wrong place to write it. So it's like write in the wrong place and publish without checking it. And that's, so useful. Yeah, because it's not about getting caught on judgments or any of that kind of stuff. Matthew said, how can meditation be helpful in separating from your thoughts? Because it is the practice of that. It is you're going to be there and your brain's going to throw up stuff, maybe, and you're going to be like, I don't care, brain. I'm giving my attention to something I want to give my attention to. And so meditation is the practice of that. So if we haven't been practicing meditation, it's very natural that we struggle not to do that. Meditation is the practice drill so that we can play the game of life and catch whatever experience comes up and weave around it and score. MD Ferdos, you asked, what do you, I think of the reappraisal method used in CBT and why ACT doesn't use it? I'm not totally, is the reappraisal where like you have a thought and then you like the brain's like, you're a terrible person. And then I go, well, actually, there are 5 things that are good about me, and therefore I am a good person. Is that what the technique is? Because in ACT, it would see that as a compulsion. Like why are you engaging with the brain at all? Like you want to go spend your time and energy on life. So if you have to stop, there's 2 things. So one, if you have to stop to like argue with a thought, like that is the compulsion. So you're taking yourself away from living your life to go and have an argument with brain indigestion. But then on top of that, if you can't, you'll find typically that people have no problem thinking up of a million more reasons why the terrible thing is true. And so when somebody tells me the reappraisal method works for them, I just assume they have a bad imagination. They're not very creative. Because I would have no problem thinking up all the reasons why the horrible things my brain says are true. Gary said, how often am I live on YouTube? You're enjoying this? First of all, I'm glad you are enjoying this. Thank you for coming on by. I alternate weeks between, so I'm on YouTube this week. So next week I'll be on Twitch. And so do a very similar thing, except we're always in an auto body shop, like a mechanic shop. And because we tune up the car's engine, the brain's engine. And then on YouTube, I'll do the next week. But sometimes if I have a YouTube video to share, I might share the YouTube video on Sunday instead of doing a live. Yeah, but pretty much every other week. So if you come by again, welcome. I look forward to seeing you again. And MD for this, yes. Last question: what is the importance of critical thinking in recovering from anxiety or depression? I would look at what's critical action, because we'll get really caught up. Like, we can get caught up in really chasing and figuring out and really trying to chase certainty about some kind of concept in our heads, and that's can be an easy path to the brain just bringing up more uncertainties, and like you very quickly get into the derealization, depersonalization, all of that kind of stuff. And so yeah, it's very useful, of course, to be to be a critical thinker, to whether it's the brain throwing something up or the world throwing something up, to notice it and be like, okay, but like how are things? I want to see things as they are. But I would look more at critical action. So what are the critical actions that are going to take me where I want to go? I would see is much more important and necessary. Because we get caught up in thinking and not going to the places we want to go. And then we get all upset that we're not in the places we want to be. But of course, we haven't been doing any actions that would actually take us there. So critical action. A thing I love that you'll see in like video game companies a lot, or software companies, is that like critical path. Right? And that's because, of course, like things are running late and launch day is coming. So we're very quickly, what's the critical path to launch? But it's also really useful to think of that as a person, I would say. Yeah. What are the critical actions to where I want to go? And why am I not doing them? Because I'm going to be super pissed when I get to that point and I don't actually have the thing that I wanted to be creating. Yeah, Adrian, you said there, like, when people say that reappraisal works for them, I'm like, you must not be thinking very hard. Yeah, that's what I would like, oh, that's so nice. So nice. You can't think of all of the other reasons that's going to go wrong. Matthew, you said, have you heard of the concept of space in between our thoughts? And if so, how can this be applied to anxious thinking? Yes. So it's something I talk about a lot. I find meditation is great. I've probably done this action so many times, this physical gesture on videos and in coaching sessions with clients. One of the huge benefits of meditation, I would say, that you build that space between you and your thoughts. That because we become so quick at reacting to them, it's a reflex. And meditation is very much the practice of sitting there, and whether it's your brain throwing up something or something happening in your environment, you're practicing being there. And yeah, stuff can happen and you're not going to react to it. And so only if we've practiced that skill do we then have it to take out into our everyday lives. And so yeah, that's what meditation is so useful with that. And then how it's applied to anxious thinking, it's so you work on that in meditation. And when we're meditating, the brain's happy to throw up some anxious thoughts too. But then it's when we're out in everyday life and something comes up, it's being able to notice it quickly as, oh yeah, that's a uncertainty my brain is throwing up. And I see where that's coming from. I understand why. But what do I want to do? What do I value doing? And that's, it's just starting to improve our capacity to not engage in compulsive reflexes in our head. It's like learning, if you've been a pro volleyball player your whole life, and now you're going to be a football player, and you can't, like European football, and now you're going to not use your hands to hit the ball. You've got to practice having the brain throw the ball at you, and you don't use your hands. You're going to use your feet. And that's what we start to do. Funbox said, what to do about the fear of going crazy and the fear of bipolar? Bringing, so any health, anxiety, fear, bringing the focus to how do I want to spend my energy on building great mental health and fitness, right? Because seeing it as, it's not us avoiding bad things is not the same as creating good things. It's just like if somebody said, okay, I'm going to avoid being I'm going to avoid, I don't even know how to describe it because we don't even talk about it this way. I'm going to avoid having poor physical fitness. No, like that wouldn't mean they're in good shape or they actually take care of their physical fitness. You see, no, like I want to be awesome at running, awesome at swimming. I want to be a weightlifter, etc. So make it about where you want to go, not what you want to avoid. Mm-hmm. And as Bagel just said, hey, Funny Box, I've had a handful of bipolar episodes, and the same mental health concepts that apply to OCD applied to hypomania and depression. And it's totally true. You're going to have an experience, friends go, you got to go do this thing, or don't go do this thing. Got to bring it back to values, seeing through the brain stuff, doing the things you actually care about. Joseph said, what did you mean by changing actions? Does it mean if we fear loneliness, we should try being lonely? It depends. So actually, loneliness is a great one to explore here. So there's a couple of things I'd look at. So one, I would look at whatever it is around loneliness that I'm afraid of. I'd actually look at how do I start to give that to myself? Recognizing, okay, there's some kind of need there, but why am I trying to get it from elsewhere? So how do I start to give it to myself? But at the same time, I'm also going to recognize, hey, you know what? I thrive when I am building relationships with people. So on one hand, I'm giving myself everything I need. So I'm not going into relationships as like I need to get something. I've got this hole and this person must fill it. I'm giving myself everything I need, and I really want to build relationships. So I'm going to go and enjoy building relationships, and I'm going to make sure I'm consistently bringing that into my lives. I'm not passively waiting on somebody else to provide kind of social nourishment in my life. So I'm really going to make sure that that's something I'm building and creating. So it's often things like that. We look at both. How do I start to give what I'm looking for to get from others, but also how do I start to build nourishments in my life that are really useful for me? And so, yeah, social interaction is one of those where I would look at like how much social nourishment am I getting in my life, and how do I create more opportunities for that if it's not there? And everyone, we've come to the end of questions. Even I see Gary just did like a thumbs up. That's perhaps the perfect emoji to end on. And we're just coming up on 1 o'clock too. So again, thank you everybody. Everybody is sticking through. We had almost another 2-hour Brain Tech Support Live. It is so awesome to get together with you all and talk about these adventures. So I want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you so much for the support. Silent Space, thank you for the donation. Thank you everybody for the awesome questions and sharing about what's going on with your brain appliances, because this wouldn't be possible without you. And also by coming together in community and us having these conversations, we make it so much more possible for people to talk about these things and see that they're not strange, they're not weird, and also we're not stuck with these challenges. We can touch these difficult things and make changes. Leave the challenges behind and go and create awesome things. So for everybody, thank you so much. Go and enjoy creating awesome things for yourself, and like we were talking about there too, in our communities, for the world too. So thank you everybody. Take care. Until next time, right? And of course, next week we'll be on Twitch for the tune-up. But of course, I mean, if everybody's brain is running perfectly, we'll just pull our brains up in the shop and show them off. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I will see you soon. Take care.